Mad About the Toys, the 11th episode of the 30th season of The Simpsons, directed by Rob Oliver. It's an okay episode. I think I rate it higher than the average score on IMDb, which is 6.0 out of 10 across 1,000 reviews and ratings. I think it's a little bit better than that, but I didn't love it, and honestly, there are two reasons for that. One, Grandpa is the main focus. Now, I love Grandpa Simpson. I think he's a brilliant character, but I find that often a lot of the episodes about him are very similar. It's the same stories again and again and again. Occasionally, we get something a little bit different, but mostly it's the same thing. And I also tend to not care for flashback episodes, and this is both of them. It's a story with flashback episodes, kind of about Grandpa's time fighting in the war, but also not really. And I won't explain what I mean by that because I don't want to spoil it, but certainly there is the war theme there. And while I'm fascinated by World War II and tend to gravitate towards, articles about the Second World War, for some reason, when it comes to flashbacks in The Simpsons with Grandpa Simpson, I just don't care. It just never appeals to me. It doesn't interest me. So this doesn't really have anything going for it in that regard. What I did like, though, is the thing that is making Grandpa experience what they're describing as PTSD and the mystery behind it. I'll explain with a spoiler warning what it is because I'm not entirely sure how much of a spoiler it would be. I didn't know what was going on. But basically, he sees these little plastic army soldiers, these little plastic army men, and screams and is experiencing these symptoms of PTSD. And the reason for it, I thought, was fascinating and creative and unexpected. So that bit I did like, but everything surrounding that I just thought was kind of boring. And also the reason he had these feelings of PTSD, I thought was a little bit ridiculous as well. So I feel like the concept was creative, but ultimately the development of the narrative didn't take a direction I thought was very good. So I guess I'll explain with spoilers what I mean by that. I don't have anything else to say about this episode other than it could have done with a subplot. We got to see the family travelling a bit, which I guess is kind of the small subplot as we see different locations. That worked relatively well, but had there been something else going on there, maybe it would have been a bit more interesting. But for me, I didn't love it. So spoilers from now. So the reason he's experiencing this PTSD, well, first of all, we learned that actually he was the model for these little army men. And I really enjoyed the scenes when he was getting his photo taken. We had all of the other, toys in the background, children playing with toys. There was the clown modelling the Jack-in-a-Box. That was all really fun. But then we learned that the reason he had PTSD was because he was kissed by a man. And I just thought I don't understand. And initially, I thought, oh, they're going to explore the fact that Grandpa Simpson might be bisexual. And I thought, okay, this could be an interesting character development. I don't think it's necessary, but it could be quite fascinating by saying, some people later in life realize their sexuality or they, finally feel ready to talk about it and that it can happen at any age. There is no set age for either realizing your own feelings or, coming out, as it were. But that's not the direction it took, really. Part of me still thinks, yeah, they were kind of leaning towards that. And then we had the kiss, which I hadn't expected, but then he immediately said, sorry, but I'm straight. I thought, okay, are you just not fully in tune with your feelings yet? But then we did have that lovely message right at the end when the little army man said, I can't remember it exactly, but it's something like, we all come in different variations, but we're all molded from the same plastic, which I just thought was a very poetic way of putting it. And I think definitely by the end of the episode, Grandpa Simpson was no longer scared or fearful about the fact that he'd been kissed by a man, which I think was really important. Had he still been freaking out about this, it would have been homophobic, and that's not really what we want to see with Grandpa Simpson. I mean, dry comments here and there are one thing, but for him to behave that way for a whole episode would be quite a big deal, and I think they took the best direction with it. But that still doesn't mean it was an entertaining episode. There were bits that were entertaining, there were bits that were kind of boring, I feel like the development of most of the narrative once we realised what was going on was really slow and not a lot happened, but I think ultimately it ended up in a reasonable place. So it's not bad. I don't rate it as poorly as the average rating on IMDb, but I still think there was room for improvement. All things considered, I'd watch it again, but it's never going to be a favourite, not even a favourite of season 30. It's not bad, but it's not the best.